Hey everybody, Bones here, Bones Garage, just bringing you an update what's going on at the garage. So 1967 Dodge Barracuda. We have the old rear that I showed you the last time out of the car, and that is our old 7¼ inch rear end. We have the new housing for the 8¾ inch rear end into the car. Some of the things, let me show you on this rear end that we have to take into consideration between this rear end and that rear end is the brakes are all the same size. The diameter and the width are all the same. All the springs and all the mechanicals in here are all the same. But if you look inside, the backing plate surface right here is different. You have 4 bolts on this side. See, on this rear end, you have the 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts on it. If you go to this rear end, the 8¾ you have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See that? So we couldn't use the backing plates off of that. Even though they're almost exactly the same, it's a different bolt pattern. So we had to use his backing plates off of the rusty old rear end. We went ahead, cleaned everything up, put some silicone slide on there. And what that does, once we clean these pads, we put the slide on there. What that does is the brake moves back and forth on these pads. Every time you push it, it goes out. When you release the brake, it goes in. That helps the brake slide better. It makes it so it goes in and out and doesn't stick. We also put the new inner seals in, and I'll show you why that was needed to be replaced. And then the last thing, well, one of the last things I want to show you is we also went ahead and put new U-bolts in. We went from 2½ inch tube, which this tube right here is a 2½ inch tube. That's where the old U-bolts went. We went from that to a 3-inch tube, which is what this is. That's a 3-inch tube. Those are U-bolts for a 3-inch. I also upgraded it from a 7/16 bolt to a 1/2 inch U-bolt. And that is really important. We're trying really hard to make everything as strong as possible. Last thing we did is we used good American steel U-bolts. The reason for that is the threads, it's a fine thread, it's cut deeper, the steel is much stronger and doesn't tend to gall nearly as quickly as those cheap China bolts. And you can also see it's got a better nut, a US big nut, with a big washer to spread the load, because you're really tightening these things down quite a bit to keep everything nice. So go for the extra couple of bucks. I know it's about $40 for 4 of these rather than the $17 for 4 of the cheap bolts. It's worth the extra cost. You want to be safe. You want your axle to stay on your spring. So there you go with that. This car is nice because he's already got the Cal-trac set up on it. And what this does, when you go to take off or you go to stop, the spring actually wants to curl up like an S. These stop that. They keep that from happening, because once that happens, when they spring back, it starts a bad action of what's called wheel hop, where the wheel actually will bounce up and down while it's spinning against the ground. And that is detrimental to your drivetrain. It could break an axle, it could pop your drive shaft, it could blow up your transmission, or even cause something bad in your motor to happen. The last couple of things I want to show you back here is the last time you saw this rear, it was before we painted it. You saw all those holes that were in this rear cover. Well, what we went ahead and did is all of these divots, we took a punch, a sharp punch, and a big hammer. And you put the punch in there and whack it. If it goes through, that was really thin. If it doesn't, no big deal. If it does go through or dent on the inside of the housing, we go ahead, drill it out, and then weld it. Weld it all shut. And if I go to this side, you can see that is exactly what we did. Every one of these little welds, you can see them, 1, 2, 3, all these little welds, is where a hole was, or where a hole came in. And we went ahead, got them all done, ground them down to make sure that we didn't have any air pockets in them where something can start leaking out. So he won't get any fluid leaking out. Remember, they had Bondo trying to cover up the holes. Doesn't work, sorry, it just doesn't work. The last thing we did back here is we're putting new brake hoses in, and we're also going to run all new brake lines because we're replacing all of the brake stuff back here. So there you go. There's what's happening with this. I'll get everything set up in the back tomorrow, and I will show you the actual differential gears and all that we're going to be putting in this car. One last thing I wanted to tell you is we also, going from this rear end to that rear end, we are having to cut down the drive shaft because your center line, so from this center line to the front of the differential pinion right here, that pinion yoke right there, this rear differential is about 2.5, 2.25 inches shorter than that differential. So we have to get the rear drive shaft cut down, rebalanced, and get it back in here. So we're waiting on that as well. So there you go, guys. I will talk to you soon. Have fun. Okay, bye.